Beautiful Erin Molan is, of course, our friend, our colleague here at Sky News, and we all miss her dad terribly. We talked about his funeral, we've talked about his life, but she's back at work on the radio on Today FM, and she's back on Sky News tomorrow night, so we thought we'd check in with her before she gets back to what she does best. So here's Erin Molan.
We've received so many incredible messages and emails and so much support, and off the back of just the most beautiful piece. I was just saying to you before we started that I haven't been able to watch a thing since Dad passed. I haven't read an article. I haven't really been able to look at anything, but we watched your piece because so many people off the back of that reached out again and said how incredible it was, and that if we as a family could sit down and watch something, we should watch that, and we did, and it really just blew us away. And we thank you so much and your team for putting together something that was just really special and something that we'll have forever. So I think you just captured the essence of what that day was, of Dad's funeral, so beautifully, and we're very grateful.
Now, I'm sure that I'm not the only person that whenever you go to a funeral, you think about, geez, what would it be one day for your kids to speak like that about you? The same when you go to weddings, what will I say at my kids' weddings? And just as a dad, you could see the work that he put in as your dad, but the love that you have for him, and you and your sisters and your brother. You spoke so beautifully. So how did you divvy up who did what?
My little sister's a lawyer, so it probably won't surprise you that she took control to a degree. But it was my little sister who kind of thought, to us, he's a dad, and that's the only role we've ever known him to play. But we realised that we're up there as family representing Dad, who was a son well before he had us as kids, and Dad, who was a brother, and from such a close, incredible Melbourne family. And he and his siblings were all wonderful, wonderful friends and loved each other very much. So we thought we'd break it up, and Felicity suggested that we did kind of Dad as a child, then Dad and Mum's love story, which was just so beautiful. And you mentioned before weddings and things like that, and I think that's probably the one thing that I've found quite difficult, because I've always looked forward to Dad speaking at my wedding. And look, no one's asked me recently, but that makes me think about that again. And I'm sure he would have spoke just beautifully. But I then got to do Dad as a dad, which was lovely, because that's the thing that, we're all the most qualified to talk about. And I got that. And then my big sister, Sarah, who is amazing, been through some really tough times herself. She lost a little girl, beautiful Emily. She got stage 3-4 bowel cancer. She spoke about Dad as a grandpa, and that was really special as well, because particularly in politics, a lot of people would have thought about Dad when it comes to things like national security. He was so passionate about that, defence, really strong on that. But it was actually the work that he did in the stillbirth committee, because of what she'd gone through, that probably brought us the most joy and satisfaction when it comes to Dad's political careers.
Now, you told a little story about when Dad took all of your stuff and threw it out the window. What did you do wrong?
So Dad had been asking me to clean my room for about a week, and Dad was a man of his word. And Dad said to me before school one day, it was year 11 at Mount St Michael's in Ashgrove, he said, if you do not clean this room before you go to school, I will empty the entire thing. It will not be here when you get home. And I'm thinking, I know that Dad is noble and a man of his word, but there's no way Dad would have the time, let alone the inclination to do that. I got home from school about 3:30. My entire room was empty. He'd taken it all to the Enoggera Army Barracks dumpster and put the whole thing in there. He did, though, Paul, drive me and help me collect it all afterwards. But I can tell you what, I never, ever let my room become messy like that again. So it was a lesson learned for me.
Well done, Jim. Well done, Jim. A lot of people want to know, and certainly I do as well. How's Mum?
She's the most impressive one in our entire family. She's the reason that Dad was able to do anything. And I know that sounds quite cliched, but she was his entire world. And he said to me towards the end of his life, he said, I'm not scared. He said, I'm not scared about dying. And I think as a person who's dedicated his entire life, most of it to service of our nation in the military first and then in the Senate, I think I believed him on that front. He said, what I'm most sad about is leaving your mum. And that's what really broke Dad's heart in so many ways. And she's okay, but like all of us, she is lost, I think, is a word that her and I spoke about today. I just kept saying, I just feel so lost, and she feels lost, but she is so incredibly strong. And I tell you what, Paul, the way that she cared for him over that year and a half, but particularly that last little while when he really went downhill quickly, and for her to see this big, strong, tough, 6'4", retired Major General Senator, such an imposing, strong man, be crippled by this horrific disease, and to love and care and shelter him from as much as she could, is something that I'll never forget. And again, it makes you reflect about the people in your life and the people that would do that for you. And I don't have enough words to say, but I feel like all the tributes that have been shared for Dad, I keep thinking to myself, I will at some stage sit down and write something beautiful for my mum, because she deserves to know how highly she's thought of as well.
We love you, and we also love his little granddaughter Eliza bouncing around in the background there. Love you, Erin. Tomorrow you will see her back here on Sky News interviewing the Prime Minister.